Hey, welcome to the Bitcoin Reformation podcast. I'm Ben Haupt and joined today by my two friends who are typically running this podcast. And I'm jumping back in, and it feels good to be jumping back in and leading off this episode. So great to have you with us today. And David and Jared, great to be with you. Feels like old times, and it'll be fun to catch up and hear a little bit about your family and everything that's going your way. So I'll start off with a quick update. Things have been busy at the Haupt House. We have one home from college this summer, and that's been a great thing. Summer after freshman year. We have our second one is going into sophomore year of high school. So a sophomore, college sophomore in high school. They're both doing really well. We had some vacation this summer. I got to spend a week in Alaska. I got to spend a week in North Georgia, and just came off of a little bit of vacation in Italy, Slovenia, and Croatia.
Do you
So
work at all, Ben?
it was
Do you work at all?
right. We save up all of our vacation for the summer because my wife works in the public school and they just don't give any days of vacation all year
Perfect.
long.
Yeah.
So we saved it all up. Last year I worked a ton in the summer for PLI, kind of stabilizing us financially, and we're in a much better place. So PLI is going really well. I'm getting ready to teach another class for the Center for Missional and Pastoral Leadership. Getting ready to present a couple of papers on issues about the church, ecclesiology, and kind of some decentralized thinking. I won't talk about Bitcoin in those papers, but Bitcoin has been a great teacher. So, yeah, lots of good stuff going on our way. So, Jared, how about for you? How's the fam?
First, just let me say it's great to be back with you. I missed the one where you came back, so I don't know how long it's been since we've been together on the Bitcoin Reformation podcast. It feels like forever, and it probably is in some way. So just good to have you back, Ben, and good to see you again in that way.
Thank you. Likewise.
The things that have been going on in my house. I mean, it's been summer, so it's our school starts next week, so we're recording this on the 30th of July. August 5th is our start date. So we have officially entered that phase of the summer where Emily and I are looking at each other saying our kids need to go to school. They're ready for the routine again, and we just can't seem to keep them occupied enough. But today, as we record, is Silas's baptism birthday. And so I woke him up this morning and said, Silas, guess what? It's your baptism birthday. And he got all big-eyed and smiled. And he went into his sister's room when it was time to go get her. And he ran in, and you could hear him shout down the hallway, Zoe, it's my baptism birthday. Hearing like the joy of that and getting to, light his baptism candle and sing happy baptism birthday to you, remembering the promises God has made and kept to him now for 3 whole years is just it's a great thing. But kids are growing, getting big, getting old. Zoe's 5 now. Judah is 1, and Silas is 3. And so Silas is going to preschool. And that's just crazy. Like, I have 2 kids that are school age, and I feel so old. And just like time has flown by. So that's one thing. I was at our church bodies convention, as you guys both know. One thing I didn't tell you is fun. My principal went with me. He was an advisory representative, or as he said, a reject representative, because he's not able to vote at the convention, but he was there, able to talk if he wanted to. But we were talking about, they had the administrator conference right before then, and he was sharing something that some presenter had shared there about how you didn't want to legislate or policy your way into a problem. And so she shared a story that I've not heard before, but I think is very helpful for our sort of Bitcoin world. She had shared a story of cobras in, I think, like South America or South Africa, I forget where the British moved in and they didn't like the cobras. And so what they started doing was paying people to kill them and bring them to him. And so, do you know what people did? Yep. They started to breed the cobras for money. And then when the British figured this out, they decided they no longer were going to pay. And then now there are cobras everywhere. And so, I use that as an opportunity. Hey, Derek, that's like a great example of why we believe Bitcoin is great, because there's no intervention. There's no, messing with the policy, that it is what it is for the future. So anyway, just a neat little, hey, Bitcoin adjacent thing that I probably wouldn't have seen or thought or heard, but I knew exactly what this lady was talking about when she told that story. So that's that. We've got strategic planning still going on here, which has been an awesome process to try and get some better clarity about who we are, what we're doing, what methods we're trying to do that thing, and then what success looks like too. And so I'm excited by that. But it's that time of the year where your days start to go really fast, and you're like, yeah, what did I do today? I was here all day, but I don't know where the time went. So one of those comes and flips through my fingers. So that's what's going on in my life, in my world. David, how are you? Sunny California. Oh, it's hot here, by the way. Very hot.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's hot here, but not Las Vegas hot. It's SoCal, 7,000 feet, mountain hot, which means at night every window's open. And last night it got down to maybe close to 60, and I was up. I've been up since about 4:30, and about 5:30 I closed every window I could find. And then all morning long we'd run around the house and say, "Isn't the air conditioning nice?" And by about this time of the afternoon, 2:30 in the afternoon, things really get warm and uncomfortable for a while. So haven't been running the oven or the stove, have been grilling a lot, which is not so bad. We save our hikes and our walks until close to sundown. I mean, it gets warm like that, but no, we're quite good. I'm trying to think what to share. Exciting thing. We have an old seminary friend, Reverend Ryan Matthias, who is the campus pastor at Concordia Seward, is flying in Saturday and will be our guest preacher here this Sunday. He was supposed to be here for 2 weeks, but then some engagements encroached in on that second week. But nevertheless, I'm looking forward to spending some time with him. We need guest preachers up here in Big Bear, California, LCMS Church. So if you are a pastor who has time on your hands and wants to come to a great place and can preach the gospel of Jesus Christ to sinners, why don't you look me up and we can talk. I'll probably vet you. We don't suffer fools up here, but if you'll come and preach the goods to us, we'd love to have you and have some guest housing. So there's that. Ben, I was hearing about your travels, and here was I was thinking, almost every day, because we were in Italy earlier this summer, Italy, Austria for like half a day, and then Germany for several days. We want to go back to Italy to sightsee.
Yeah.
We want to go to Germany to eat. I mean, and I'm not casting shade on Italian food. Okay, I'm not.
Yep.
We had some great Italian food, but just German cuisine. This is my hot take on the day. It is not a popular take. German cuisine has fallen on hard times, and sadly so. It is
I agree.
spectacular. So yeah, we've been leading in occasionally here and there on some German recipes. So that's what I have to say. I want to go to Italy. I want to eat in Germany. I want to go to Germany. I want to eat in Italy. Both. But yeah, there you go. And apart from that, the younger kids start high school. They're next week, a junior and a senior. And then Levi goes off to university again in about 2.5 weeks. And between now and then, Megan and I will be in Chicago and northern Michigan on some work for me that she's able to go with. So we will we'll go together, which is really thrilling. The first time we've really done that, and get to see our oldest son while in Michigan. So that's the rundown of the Ruffner home. I'll be looking in Chicago, maybe to the Berghof for some German cuisine there, Ben.
Nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
We have a new restaurant here in St. Louis, in walking distance from our home, called Great Heart Brewing, and it's some of the best German food outside of Germany that I've ever had.
Wow.
Bit on the pricey side, but well worth it. So I join you. I love German cuisine. I'm headed there in 2 weeks for some PLI stuff. So yeah, there's Germany has a special place in my heart.
Good. All right. Well, we've rounded the horn. Good to be all three of us here together. We're We're always texting in the days leading up to this to say, what are we talking about? Sometimes it's really, really obvious. Sometimes we're searching or maybe sifting between a few ideas. But today, I'm taking the lead. Um, I think long in use in the English language is the language of dilemma, this or that. I did not track down the etymology of it, but there is a newer word that you maybe have heard thrown about called the trilemma. Sometimes the trilemma is it this thing or those two, or sometimes a trilemma is used to say of these three things you can only have two of them. So sometimes one of the three, sometimes two of the three, but you have a dilemma is either or. Trilemma is one or the others, or two and not one. But anyways, we have this language. And with some other things going on this week, primarily that our new head of the Fed, Kevin Warsh, came out in front of the microphone again yesterday, and the markets were saying, is he going to raise rates? Is he going to lower rates? Is he going to keep rates there? And you have different people calling for different things, and to let the cat out of the bag, he kept rates the same. With all that being the case, I started thinking about that word dilemma again. Um, and so here's what we're going to do today. We're going to go dilemma to trilemma to trilemma to dilemma. So we're going to kind of, I don't know, it's kind of an ABBA. I'm thinking of some of our Psalms classes or different texts of the Bible where we follow patterns like this. But here's the dilemma. So we're going to talk ultimately about the US dollar and then go to Bitcoin. Which is a bit of a 1-2 punch maybe that we've done before, but I truly hope that it is helpful. And it's based a little bit on some conversations I've had on the side with some friends and even a detractor who I have had the chance to, in nice fashion now, have some X communication back and forth in terms of X messaging and the like. But talk about these. So here's the situation, though. When it comes to the Fed, it's an interesting thing. The Fed, we've got a group of what is it? I think there's 13 regional Fed banks around the U.S. I think Ben Haupt maybe is the closest to one. There's one in St. Louis there. I don't think there's one in Vegas. There's probably one maybe in L.A., but I'm 2 hours from that. But anyways, these 13 Fed chairs come together and they vote on whether to raise rates, keep them the same, or decrease them. And three of them voted to raise, the rest voted to keep, and so they're holding. Well, what's at stake here? Why would someone want to raise? Why would someone want to lower it? And what's kind of the danger of this moment? So here's what's happening: is the Fed's actually in a pressure cooker. It's not always the case. Sometimes it'd be the case that you know altogether collectively that the good and right thing to do here is to lower, or the good and right thing to do here is to raise rates. Now we have a new Fed chair, Kevin Warsh. We've got a president who ostensibly chose him precisely to lower rates. And we've got other people calling for the raising of rates. Well, what happens? What happens right now? And well, it's this. They're in a good old-fashioned dilemma, gentlemen. And so here's the dilemma. And I pulled it down. I took some notes. I'm going to be looking here to my right. Here's what happens if they hike rates right now. Borrowing gets more expensive. That's one of the bottom lines there. But borrowing gets more expensive. That means for business loans. That definitely means for mortgages. And I don't know if you've seen this, but we're looking for a velocity in both of those markets, right? We consider that a sign of health. When homes are moving, people are buying, right? There's a certain amount of liquidity of people and places and geography that we consider to be healthy. And when that whole market gets kind of frozen up, it's a sign typically that there's stress in the markets, right? People aren't, they're just hunkering down where they're at, right? And so if we raise rates, mortgage rates go up. They're already high. Do you gentlemen know what they're at right now? Are they still in the sevens? I think so.
I don't know what the latest is, but
Yeah.
yeah, they're not going down
Right.
because nobody has lowered rates for quite some time. So
Yeah. And so if you raise it, those would go up. Those go up. Less happens in terms of commerce. The borrowing of money to put to hopefully profitable and productive ends. And so things grind down and you risk recession. Okay. But here's what's also true. If they were to raise rates, the government's own interest bills would explode. Pre-COVID, our government ran each year, spent around $4 trillion. Post-COVID, that jumped by 50% to 6 trillion plus. And now, because the Fed rates are higher, more than $1 trillion of those dollars each year is spent just paying the interest on our own debt, right? Um, I use credit cards, gentlemen. I use it. There have been some moments in our life where we have not paid it off perfectly within a month, and those moments kill me because the interest rates are immediately there. Now, imagine a moment when, for not only months or years, you've had credit card debt and all you have paid is the interest and none of the principal, right? It's a high interest rate. You're kind of becoming a slave to that rate. You're not digging out. Our own government is threatened with that very prospect. We've got trillions of dollars of debt, and every year a certain portion of that rolls over, and it rolls over at whatever the Fed interest rate is at the time. And so right now, a bunch of older Fed debt that was financed down around like 2% is coming due again at around 4+%, the Fed rate. And what that effectively means is that they are not paying the principal on their credit card. Rather, they are paying a bigger and bigger bill on the interest alone. I mean, help me if that happens to me or you, like that's a bad moment, and it's probably something we're gonna all be watching out for our kids with, right? I had a son just the other day say, I just ordered a new credit card, and we talked about it. He actually picked a good one. He did his research, but now to live with one, right, and to live in healthy fashion. Furthermore, if rates go up, get this: asset prices fall. Who holds the assets? The people with lots of money in the U.S. So if rates go up, it puts stress on the politicians' biggest donors as well. So all this is related, okay? Rates go up equals bad, all right? Okay, so how about rates go down? That'd be good, right? Well, here's what cheaper money, here's the other side of that dilemma. So we've got a horn poking in on one side, a horn on the other. Cheaper money risked reigniting inflation, right? That's the reason they raised rates to begin with, was to fight inflation that was happening on the heels of COVID in particular. Why was it happening? Well, a lot of money was thrown into the system. Like 20 to 40% of the total money supply was created afresh and thrown into the system, led to higher prices. And so suddenly then they act shocked and they said, we need to raise rates to fight inflation. So cheaper money risks reigniting that inflation. It also does this, get this, it punishes savers. And when we say savers, we're typically talking in dollars. It weakens the dollars, and it helps those with assets, actually. Cheaper rates do. So, I don't know. I have a son who's already trying to save. He's trying to save money, thinking of a home someday. It punishes them. I'll stop there. That's the dilemma that we're in now. Again, it's not always a dilemma. Sometimes you can go one direction or the other. But what our government has done in all of their wisdom and collected foolishness, which is to say all of us together, this seems very biblical, is we've gotten ourselves into a sticky spot, and no one, quite frankly, knows how to get out of it. Because if you go to the left, there's issues. If you go to the right, there's issues. What do you do? I'm going to come up for air and let you guys talk.
Well, I think it's interesting. I just talked about the sort of intervention type thing, and remember we did that episode a long time ago, Ben. I think when you led us kind of through Hayek's teaching on that, and it's almost like, the medical term I think is cascading interventions.
Yeah.
So if you're a sick person and they do one thing, well, nothing is side effect free. Nothing has zero risk of other things needing then to also happen. And so what can happen to people is just one thing after another has to be added, has to be done to them, et cetera, et cetera. And so in some ways you get into this place, this dilemma, because of the intervention itself. And so, there's no way we could actually point to, probably short of the, hey, going off the gold standard, but short of that, there's nowhere we could say, hey, well, this all began in this moment. because it's just one more intervention on top of another intervention that, everyone has their, hey, this is why they're wrong. This is why this should have been the Monday morning quarterback syndrome, right? Everyone thinks they could do a better job type thing. But really, the whole situation itself is the very problem, so to say, that it's a dilemma because we've put ourselves, like you said, David, into the dilemma by the way in which we function, the system, the money, the structures that we have for around how our US dollar functions. So it's just kind of a semi-ironic thing that our attempts to do well have actually created a somewhat lose-lose situation, at least in the short term, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I've found this whole conversation very interesting, and I started, paying attention to interest rate meetings probably around the time that I got into Bitcoin, and began to realize, as many Bitcoiners have, that along with most economists, that assets, and especially Bitcoin, tend to go. If they're cutting rates, Bitcoin's going to go up. If they're raising rates, Bitcoin's going to go down in price. And so I've just been generally very interested in this, but especially I think it's interesting to just kind of add another wrinkle into this whole equation, which is that politics have gotten much more aggressive about their opinions of which way the Fed board chairs should go with their rate cuts or rate hikes, and not very many presidents are going to encourage the Fed chair to hike rates, because that's not good for economy for most people in the kind of everyday. When borrowing rates go up, when mortgage rates go up, that has a whole downward. It has a downward effect on the economy and upward effect on prices. And so there's been this whole back and forth around Jerome Powell, whether you like him or not. He was under a ton of scrutiny because he was not aligned with President Trump, and so then eventually Powell gets tossed out, and Warsh comes in, and Trump is a big fan of him, and yet Warsh has been he has not been a rate cutter. He has not been able to do that, and that was clearly what his mandate was: is to cut rates and get the economy pumping again. But inflation keeps on coming in a bit hot, and the Iran war, or
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it, it's not a war. That has raised prices of gas and a variety of other things. So I wouldn't want to be in that kind of a role where typically Fed chairs have been very independent, and some people have even called them like the high priests of our economy. And they come out and they've kind of done their examination of the liver and the claws, and they're trying to suss out what is the right way for the economy to go. And frankly, it's probably, there's a whole bunch of math to make it look like this is all very rational, but at the end of the day, they have to make a decision. They have a dilemma: cut or hike, or keep things as is. And they're under a ton of pressure. And Bitcoin, to bring Bitcoin into this, Bitcoin just keeps on saying, tick tock, another block. I don't care. I'll wait out this, that, or the other Fed chair. I don't know. Has Bitcoin seen three different Fed chairs. It started under Bernanke, then
Probably. Yeah.
oh no, oh right, was it just Bernanke, Powell, and then Warsh? Is Janet Yellen in there in some? She wasn't Fed chair. She was she was head of the Treasury.
Let's see.
So
I'm
yeah,
looking it up. Yeah.
I think just three Fed chairs. Um, Bernanke was great for Bitcoin because he was
Yeah. It was
so bad.
Bernanke and then Yellen because she had that position
Oh, Yellen. It
first.
was Yellen.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Bernanke,
Um,
Yellen, then Powell.
Powell and now Warsh. Yeah.
No, yeah. So,
Yeah. It's
so yeah,
interesting.
Bitcoin doesn't care. Bitcoin just keeps on chugging along, and frankly, I mean the mathematical equation of Bitcoin has precisely zero to do with the decisions that the Fed makes, and in the short term, sure, some of the Fed decisions will make Bitcoin's price go up or down, but in the long term, uh, Bitcoin just keeps on chugging up because it is a fundamentally different mindset than the Fed.
Yeah. It is fundamentally pretty boring too, right? There's halvings every 4 year, and that's on the reward for successfully mining a block. So in terms of the new Bitcoin coming out as rewards for successfully mining a blocks, that reward is halved every 4 years. And ultimately, by seeing that it successfully halves every 4 years, we see that the code is still in enforcement. We see it drawing down, and we can see actually the curve, which leads to the entire 21 million supply being issued by somewhere around the year 2140. In many ways, it's very boring. You look at the price is volatile, but that's a function of all the other things happening in the world and not Bitcoin itself. To your point,
Exactly.
Ben, TikTok, it's it's absolutely boring. It's like 99% runtime. It has behaved exactly at every moment the way Satoshi designed it to behave, and there's no one there to vote for really ultimately different behavior, or for people to do that. The incentives would be self-defeating, and it just you don't see that lineup. So that's another episode for another time. Yeah, I was thinking as both of you were talking, it's like, why are we in this dilemma? Because of over engineering. Well, what do we need to do? We need to engineer harder. That's where we're at here, right? And
We're
it's
we're in
just
this dilemma, frankly, because of Alexander Hamilton. I don't know if you've had a chance to, on one of the vacations, I had a chance to rewatch Hamilton, and I will admit that when it came out, I liked it. I liked I like rap. That maybe doesn't fit me and my personality. I don't probably look like a guy that likes rap, but I came up under the Eminem era. Um, but Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton was the guy that really argued that we need a central bank and we need federal
yeah.
oversight over monetary policy. And as I watched Hamilton again, I went, oh, I mean, the music's kind of catchy, the story's pretty decent, but Hamilton's ideas and frankly the federal papers in general, gross blech. I'm not a fan, and I was at a conference this summer, the Acton
Yeah.
Institute, and there was some very nice academic presentation of the differences between Jefferson and Hamilton, and a lot of people hate on Jefferson, but because he was a slave owner and all kinds of things, he wasn't maybe the most moral human being, and yet when it came to his insights on economy and a decentralized form of government, I'm much more of a Jeffersonian than I am a Hamiltonian.
There you
Before
go.
we go any further, I want to
Yep.
tap on the boring thing of Bitcoin too, because
Yeah.
at
Go
least
for
right
it.
now in the Bitcoin world, the Bitcoin community, I've not super followed this closely. So if either of you have followed the Bit 110 stuff more, please interrupt me when I say something in an error. But there's been, call it small division or arguments or infighting, if you will, about changes to the software, changes to the Bitcoin network itself, not to change the supply cap, but to sort of do whack-a-mole, if you will, on certain types of transactions. And the two kind of sides of that, one of them is very much like we should not change the consensus network if it is fine functioning and people are still submitting, doing valid transactions, etc. And the other side is looking to try and sort of impose, if you will, a certain level of filtering, a certain level of intervention on that. So maybe I'm playing my hand with what I think is right here a little bit. But even within the Bitcoin world itself, there's this tension to say, hey, do we need to change this? Should we change this? Or should we keep it somewhat boringly the same, even if that means we have less control over what kind of transactions are allowed, are submitted, are, and become part of the blockchain. So just another, it's not just supply cap, it's even go so far and as deep as the transactions themselves that we allow to take place on the network too, that are boring, if you will, in the sense of the word.
David, any
Absolutely.
thoughts on that? I have a few thoughts, and I don't know, maybe a hot take, but go ahead, David.
Well, you go. Why don't you go for it? We started it. Why don't you get it out there, Ben? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so Adam Back. If you're not familiar with Adam Back, he has been involved with Bitcoin since before Bitcoin started. He was involved with this hash cash, and he famously developed this whole SHA-256 encryption method because he was concerned about the problems of spam. So Adam Back has been around for a really long time. Fascinating individual. He has very publicly come out against the BIP 110 proposal, and his rationale is basically, I think I can summarize it, that he doesn't want a centralized approach that would over govern Bitcoin. He wants it to be a decentralized approach, and so that ends up meaning that he's okay with people putting some extra whatever JPEGs or extra information into the Bitcoin protocol. What I think is interesting is I'm pretty sure that this is right, that during the block size wars in 2017, Back was actually a small blocker opposed to the large blockers. And so I would love to have a conversation with Adam Back and to ask him whether that's a consistent position or a change in position. It would seem to me that the small blockers were arguing that Bitcoin protocol is primarily a a savings mechanism rather than a monetary vehicle. The whole question was about how many transactions and
Right.
whether the Bitcoin protocol can scale. But I think this BIP 110 thing is kind of interesting because I would argue that I don't want a bunch of trash and spam on the Bitcoin blockchain because Bitcoin's use case is a store of value. That is, I think, what the Bitcoin community has settled into. There's lots of other blockchains out there for lots of other things. And frankly, I've been kind of pro the BIP 110 just to get the trash out and stay true to the mechanism that Bitcoin is a store of value. And so if you want to be a wizard and you want to do all this fancy stuff, go do it on the Ethereum blockchain or whatever. Make your own blockchain. So I've been kind of surprised that that Back and Sailor, who I don't know that Sailor's
Sailor's
had
come
a
up with
great
an interesting
position on
word
this,
that he's
but
applying to it. Not come up with. It's not that he invented it. He keeps saying, "Hey, be careful of and he calls them iatrogenic effects. This is when iatrogenic refers to when a physician tries to help a patient but unintentionally makes the patient worse, right? So this is like at layman's level, we've always talked about this for a long time. This is the law of unintended consequences. And so he claims, at least verbally, and I don't know his motives otherwise, so just listening to his argumentation, his claimed argument in Saylor's world against BIP 110, which is this change in the protocol. They're just named BIPs and they're given a number. He's against it because he believes there will be these unintended consequences working out of it, which is a fair consideration. We just said Bitcoin's really, really boring. And we're saying a little bit, we don't like what's in it now, but I think even more of the BIP 110 impetus is we don't like some of the things going in, being written in the blocks now. But boy, I'm really worried about the future. Well, that's a future we don't even fully know yet. So what do you do about that? But it does yeah. So just so you know, so our hearers know, if you didn't know, there are Bitcoin core developers constantly working on Bitcoin, and it is a project. It's an open source project. Nobody tells a developer they can't work on it, and yet there's only so many developers the worldwide who are working on it. And then you can submit ultimately a development change. There's a few different kinds of them, but ultimately it's a question of whether the nodes which run a ledger of every Bitcoin transaction, and that not just past transaction, that's a ledger of all the blocks and the transactions inside the blocks, and they do it every 10 minutes or so and a new one comes out. It's this distributed ledger, probably like north of 100,000 of these nodes worldwide. They would have to take up this kind of new BIP 110, this new software, and implement it for it to work going forward. Yeah, it's all very interesting. I would say this, Jared and Ben, in real time, it's the block size wars. I wasn't around for that, so that's a history lesson. This is suddenly like, wow, this is what it's like to kind of be in the midst of it. There is a little bit of a which way do we go from here, left or right? And there's going to be consequences to left and right in this case. I don't know that it's exactly a dilemma for Bitcoin or not, but we'll see. We'll see. So maybe we'll be reporting on that more fully in some time to come. All right, I'm going to move from the from the dilemma. Do we raise hikes or lower? That resides with the Fed. To more of the trilemma that just quite frankly politicians and nobody more than the chief executive officer of the United States, which is to say the president, but behind the president, then Congress feels the pinch as well. They're in a fiscal trilemma. Our dilemma is there because honestly, we've got addicted to spending and life has gotten very expensive. The past choices we've already made, which is to say those interest on what we owe. Well, what can they do about that? What can they do about national debt? Now you have truly a trilemma here as well, where here's their options. And actually, this is a funny trilemma. Maybe it doesn't fully qualify because you could actually do a little bit of all three. But ultimately, imagine if you could only do one of these or even two of these. Here's what they could do. Cut spending. They could cut spending, guys. They could spend less. And we're actually going to come up for air. Why might they cut, and why are they likely to not cut? Jared and Ben.
Because if you cut spending, you're not going to get reelected. And the incentive structure is there for people to want to get elected because we pay our representatives, which frankly I think is a terrible idea. So they're incentivized to stay in office because what else are they going to do that can make them as much money with all the influence they have? I love the Nancy Pelosi portfolio ticker that just shows that Nancy Pelosi has outperformed Warren Buffett and his portfolio. There's an incentive structure for government officials to not cut spending because spending means that their constituents are getting more stuff from the government. But we're addicted to getting stuff from the
That's the
government.
word. That's the word.
Grow your own groceries and raise a cow. I want to get back to the land and live off the the grid. I'm ready to throw in the towel on all this government stuff. I think it's
There you go.
ridiculous.
Jared, what do you have to add?
Ben, you would like, there's someone who just moved into our neighborhood whose license plate says Libertin. So I'm assuming they mean libertarian. So anyway, you would like them. I mean, it's the same reason why I think churches and nonprofits are always suspect of additions to a budget, because they know once you start paying someone or you increase their salary, there's no such thing as cutting that salary or decreasing that person without just downright firing them. And we are awfully afraid of doing the firing, and so we generally just say, well, let's just not get there in the first place. Don't even start the thing. And so it's something I think we kind of live with. Maybe call it the mindset of having this sort of scarcity mindset in our own churches, right? There's never going to be enough, and so we need to make sure we don't get into a situation when we have to do something we don't want to, whereas the government just says, hey, like, there'll always be more money because we can always make it, and so there's no reason to ever not stop spending because we can just hit the button on the keyboard.
Yep. So cutting spending doesn't work because they're addicted to the money, and so are we. And if you lock yourself in the room with an addict and then take away the thing to which they're addicted to, they will get cranky in the least, and life will not be comfortable for both of you. So you keep giving the addict what they are addicted to. So cutting spending, I think there's actually another structural reason, guys, why they can't cut spending as well. And I didn't even know this till about 3 or 4 years ago, well into my Bitcoin journey. I did not understand that government spending is included in gross domestic product, GDP. And so you cut government spending and immediately the patient looks sicker, right? Immediately are reported.
That's awesome.
Yeah, such a farce. Amazing? All this modernist.
Yeah, and put differently, if you're the politicians in charge and GDP comes in low, one way you can solve that is what? Spend more today. Yeah, it's crazy. Absolutely. Okay, so we're not going to cut spending. And you mentioned the money printer. I'm going there eventually, Jared. That's third. But the second one is you can raise taxes, right? Let's just raise the taxes. Let's make the people bleed more. And I think we're going to go through this. Basically, same as the prior one. If you raise taxes, you're not getting reelected. That's one. Second of all, structurally, there is something called the Laffer curve, where you eventually raise taxes enough. Yeah, you, the government, you're getting money, but now people don't have money to live. People with what optionality they may or may not have will choose geographically to move to a better jurisdiction as concerns taxes. And if you need a lesson in that, look up the United Kingdom right now and the mass exodus of millionaires from the United Kingdom. They're going elsewhere in the European Union where taxes are lower, and they are living good existences elsewhere. So you can cut spending, you can raise taxes, or you can print money. Printing money does have downstream negativity, but guess what? Printing money gives the addict a hit today and makes you a hero. So our government, when it comes to the debt that we have on hand, they feel these pressures from three sides that something's got to give. Either we need to cut spending, they're not going to do it, that hurts too much. You're going to raise taxes, not going to do it, it hurts too much, it gets you out of office as well. The easy thing to do, the easiest lever to pull is to print more money, to inflate your way out. So there you go. Right now, the Fed has a dilemma. The government with the debt has a trilemma of sorts. And I'm afraid that they don't even see printing money, gentlemen, as the least of all evils. I think they see it as a good thing. And that saddens me because I think it hurts actually decent, common people. All right. What else do we have to say about these three things, this fiscal trilemma that our government's in?
I'll throw in two ideas. First, we've just celebrated the 250th anniversary of the United States Declaration of Independence, all this kind of stuff. Why did that happen? because of taxation, right?
Yes, sir.
Um, I, I saw the other day somebody said, you think that America is this low tax place. Try not paying your property tax. We
Yep.
actually don't believe as a country in the right to private property, because you have to pay tax on everything, even the dollars that are sitting in your bank account. The government's going to try to take their pound of flesh in some way. I think we need another Boston Tea Party to overthrow things. I'm in a spicy mood and I'm ready to
Ben,
to change some
Ben,
things up.
we had a tea. Remember the Tea Party of the late aughts, oh 08, oh 09,
Yeah,
oh
well,
10? Check
that
this
was
out.
that was really about just trying to not get Obamacare passed.
I understand that,
I
but get
that
this.
Tea Party didn't
I know,
didn't
but get this.
accomplish
At
much
the
of anything.
time, we said government debt was bad. The conservatives in America who formed this Tea Party said government debt was bad. Do you know what the debt level of the United States government was? It was less than $10 trillion at the time. It had taken them 225 years or 230 years essentially to get to 10 trillion. And now it's just taking us another 15 years to add 25 plus trillion on top of that. Actually, it's closer to 30 now. We're between 39 and 40 trillion dollars in total debt. Yeah, it's accelerating. It's accelerating,
Yeah.
and it's terrifying. Yeah,
What does Lynn
And
Alden say? Nothing stops this train, right?
nothing stops
exactly.
this train. That's right.
The the fourth, maybe the fourth challenge or possible way out, and we're seeing this right now, that governments have, is to go to war and to take other people's stuff. And frankly, the Iran war is really complicated, and I think there's lots and lots of complications with Israel and its involvement. I think there's lots of complications with Saudi Arabia and its involvement. But the petrodollar, that the dollar is, has been the currency in which oil would be paid, and now Iran is saying they're good with the yuan being the dollar or the currency that oil is paid for. I think that's really at the heart of this whole Iran conflict, and I think that Scott Bessent, frankly, the head of the Treasury, is the one that's kind of leading us in this war, because frankly the U.S. dollar is not worth anything if we can't defend the petrodollar, and I think the jury's out on whether we can do it or not. And I'm not saying that I'm speaking against the United States, but just it's a live conflict, and I think there's a lot of unknowns about how this thing is going to go. Um, so yeah, we'll see how that plays out.
Absolutely. Okay, well we're 48 minutes in. The question is, can we deal with the other things pretty quickly? I think we can. I'm looking for the right spot in my notes, and I kind of lost it, to be honest with you. When it comes to Bit, oh, I've got it right here. Bitcoin. When it came to designing Bitcoin, Satoshi actually had a trilemma. All right, and by the way, this is not just we didn't just finish up something and totally change topics. This relates. This absolutely relates to everything we just said. So, whereas everything to this point ultimately is critique and concern, deep concern, I think, because this does have to do with everyday Americans, real working class people, our neighbors, our family, our friends. Well, that is true. Satoshi set out to design something, and when builders build, they want to build something good. They want to solve actual problems, and Satoshi saw these problems. Nevertheless, when trying to come up with a cryptocurrency, which he then called Bitcoin, uh, you basically had to design for three things, but you could really only pay attention and give your best energies to two of the three. And this is considered to be a well accepted concept. And here are the three things: you can be decentralized, which Bitcoin is. We referenced the whole ledger of Bitcoin running on hundreds of thousands of nodes throughout the world, miners spread throughout the world. Who's in charge of Bitcoin? We are, which sounds kind of weird. I don't know. It's like it's kind of this hive, decentralized. People have said, who's Satoshi? We are all Satoshi. Kind of interesting, different sort of concept. But you can choose between decentralized and secure, or you can be decentralized and scalable. And one of you brought this up earlier. You can only do so many transactions in a Bitcoin block, which happens every 10 minutes. So get this. I'm sorry. Or you can be secure and scalable and not decentralized. So you have to choose two of these three. And here's what Satoshi chose. He said, we'll definitely be decentralized and we will definitely be secure. But in terms of scalable, the blocks will only be so big, and therefore there's only so many transactions. And here's what Satoshi trusts: transactions every 10 minutes in a given block. Satoshi trusted that given enough time, people would build layer twos or different layers on top of Bitcoin that could handle more transactions. This actually, even though that if that might sound strange to our hearers, that's sort of the history of U.S. paper currency. The real money was the gold that the government owned, and then based on a careful audit of the gold they owned, they were willing to issue so much paper currency, which was a coupon for that a placeholder. And why would we do the paper? Because you can quite frankly just distribute it much more easily. It's distributable. We can have it broken down into different values per paper, or coin as well. But gold, meanwhile, is hard to travel with, whereas paper is a bit easier. And so they created like a layer two on top. That's what Satoshi is talking about. He says, I'm going to design, he, she, or they, for decentralization and security, but the scalability, it's only going to be so big. And why was he not willing to go to bigger blocks? Because in this case, and this describes the trilemma even further, if you go to bigger blocks, then average Joes like David Ruffner can't afford the amount of memory that it's going to take to run a node that stores all of those transactions. All right. As it is, I'm just on a multi-terabyte hard drive that my node is running off of. I've got headroom in this hard drive for about another 5 to 10 years of the ledger ahead of me. And by the time we get to that moment, hopefully storage prices have come down again to where I can get a larger. Yeah, I know that's questionable right now, Jared. Right.
Right.
But this is part of the trilemma. If they made the blocks really huge and allowed for the number of transactions, like happens on Visa, MasterCard networks, for instance, then the David Ruffners of this world would not be able to run nodes in their homes. It would cost thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars to have enough memory to keep a whole copy of the ledger, at which point some large corporations and banks, Amazon, Charles Schwab, some others would be, hey, the 10 of us over here, or the 2 of us over here, or the 1 of us over here are going to keep the ledger, at which point we're right back to where we were. A lot of people trusting one or very few other institutions.
Well, and frankly, that's what the Fed does. They're the 13 people that keep the ledger of the money supply in the U.S. So, I mean, the real question is, do you want to trust 13 people who go into their cave and try to ferret out what the right answer is, or do you want to trust a protocol that you can look at the code and the math, and it's just it's boring, but it's very, very predictable.
That's
Well,
right.
this is what like every cryptocurrency, right, has to wrestle with those three things, right? Speed, decentralization, and then security. And a lot of the ones that, at least that I feel like I see, usually focus less on the decentralization and more on the security and speed thing, right? So you think about companies like Coinbase has their own blockchain base. I think Robinhood just started their own blockchain as well. And those are very centralized things, right? And so, sure, it's great when they run really fast and you can do lots of things on them. But it was, I think, last week or so, or 2 weeks ago, where Coinbase's blockchain was down, right? And that's a decentralization problem. Whereas, the Bitcoin network has that 99% uptime, all those sort of things too. So it's something that every project has to make a decision on. They can't just engineer their way out of it. They can't just try harder, as we've said.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then all that finally leads to, um, for Satoshi, whoever he, she, or they were in designing this, the dilemma of how much. And ultimately, here's what I want to say is it doesn't appear to have been a dilemma for Satoshi. Even though the number of Bitcoin, 21 million, is a strange number. And by the way, again, as a reminder, or teaching for the first time, each one of those million Bitcoin can be broken down into 100 million parts. So there's a lot of subunits here to be worked with. It's kind of future proof in that regard. But even though the number is weird, Satoshi said, I'm going to design this. And that's why the decentralization of all the nodes, more people the better, having a copy of the ledger, having to agree on the ledger, to have consensus, to have authority. The big part was whatever number Satoshi picked, in this case 21 million, was to be enforced in a decentralized manner so that it can't be changed. Whereas our government deals with a lot of dilemmas and trilemmas because they have designed many levers to pull, and they pull them over and over again. Oh, actually, there's a good image. Boy, I was a Goonies kid growing up. Ben, were you a Goonies kid?
Absolutely.
And
Love it.
and
Love it. I
Jared,
see exactly
Jared,
where you're going.
Jared, no, go back and watch Goonies. There's this great moment where they've gone down the wishing well. They're going after Chester Copperpot. They're stuck. The Fratellis are after them. They don't know a way forward, and they're underneath something. And there's a bunch of pipes. So they start banging on all these pipes, pulling on all these pipes. There's levers to pull, and here's the thing: pulling all those levers leads to destruction. In their case, it's sort of fortuitous destruction. It opens a way for them that wasn't there. But imagine that. It's kind of an image. It's an image of chaos. Before it's good for them, it's bad. And I'm sure that's what the Fed and everybody wants as they pull levers. But you give people levers to pull, and they're going to pull it. That's me when I'm a passenger in a friend's new car. If I'm not driving, I'm testing out every button there is, and they'll laugh at me. I'm just trying it out, seeing what everything does. If you put a lever before me, give me enough time, I'm going to pull that lever. And Satoshi said, pulling levers is precisely what gets us into dilemmas. So instead of having a lever to pull, he creates a fixed number. And that really is the North Star for Satoshi. Everything else he did in terms of design, he, she, or they, was to support this 21 million Bitcoin that we can't pull a lever to fudge that supply. And that might mean bad things for you from time to time, but you'll suffer the consequences then in the short term. You'll learn from that and hopefully right the ship, get back on track. With our ability to pull the lever constantly and print more money, we push problems further off into the future. But here's the hard part: those problems tend to only get bigger down the line in the future. They grow. It's like the little white lie that grows, or the speck of dust going down a snow slope that turns into a giant snowball, and there's a village down below. Or here in the West, it's like if you stop too many of the forest fires when they're small, what you do is you create a backlog of fuel for a big conflagration later on. So Satoshi basically said, dilemma, what dilemma? Let's design a better money where neither Satoshi himself nor anyone else can fudge, can pull a lever, particularly on the supply itself. Well, I'm going to say this because I think we do need to be wrapping up. I'm going to sum it up and then give it over to you for any last words. But if we could say this to our listeners, yeah, hopefully we've taught you a thing or two, or connected some dots. That would delight me to hear that. So if you want to share that, that'd be great. You can push back and disagree. That's fine as well. But I think for us, I know for me, for certain, that again, we look at the current state of things and say nobody maybe started with bad motives, but given the chance to fudge things in the moment, our our monetary and fiscal situation is ripe with just that. With the results, causes, and effects of people fudging things, pulling levers all over the place, the picture would be a little bit grim. But with Satoshi, we don't just have a critic, we have somebody who decided to build something and take out of human hands that which is otherwise too tempting for us to have in our hands, which has led, quite frankly, to a lot of misery and a lot of worry right now. And for that, I am thankful. So, again, Bitcoin is a tool. I believe, and I think we believe, it's a better tool. But of course, as well, if somebody comes along someday and builds a better tool yet, a better money yet, that also will be an exciting day. That's my closing sentiment. How about you, Ben and Jared?
Yeah, just real quick, I introduced this fourth lever that was, kinetic warfare,
Yeah.
using guns to kind of enforce your monetary policy. I actually love that Bitcoin has no guns, right? So the fun thing for me about Bitcoin is if you're a skeptic about Bitcoin, that's fine. Like I I mean I if you would love to try to destroy the Bitcoin protocol, I'd actually invite you to try. It would be really fun to see how much time and effort and money you want to try to take it down. Nobody has figured out how to do this. It's too expensive, frankly. But if you don't want to be a part of it, Bitcoin doesn't, frankly, care. It has zero tanks. It has zero artillery. It can't force you to do anything. And I think that is perhaps one of its greatest selling features is it has precisely no power over you. I am so tired of power, and I am so skeptical of power. I've been abused by power, and so I like when things don't have power over me. And frankly, to bring this back around to the gospel, Jesus does ultimately have all the power, and all of his enemies will be put under his feet. But in this wonderful season of grace that we live in, Jesus won't coerce anybody to be his follower. He dies and completely gives over all of his power. That's the kind of Lord that I want to follow.
And for freedom, Christ has set us free. So he takes all that
Amen.
power, lays it aside that we might be free. And if you don't know what that means, also come knocking on our door. We'd love to talk with you about it. Jared, the last word.
I don't feel like I should say anything else, but I
Oh,
guess
go
I'm a
for it.
pastor, so I feel like I have to say something.
Do it.
So I was gonna try and do a similar thing, bring it back to the gospel, and do a +1 on what you just said, Ben. I was sitting here talking with a young lady in college, and sort of has reawoken her faith that she had as a young person, and yet with a more eye towards. I don't want to call it like a purity, sort of a, hey, I know I'm saved because I'm doing good things. And, it means certain people in my life might not be because they're not at my level. And so it was a great opportunity to remind her and to be reminding myself, right? We are saved by the finished work of Jesus alone. And that the addict who comes to worship every Sunday to hear the gift of forgiveness, to receive Christ's body and blood in the sacrament, to hear the word proclaimed over them, is just as much saved as a person who thinks they are living the perfect, sinless life. And that is all because of Jesus' work for you, for me, and for the world. And so I would just say it that way, that there's no dilemma between works or faith. That it is faith alone that grants us the salvation and the certainty we have in Jesus. And that, for me and for you, for us, is the reason we get out of bed. It keeps us sane on our worst days, and helps us do the work that we get to do. So that's how I'll end.
So
Beautiful.
good. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for being with us, listeners. Until we meet you again, be well, and please do send on any questions, objections, ahas. We would take it all. We would enjoy hearing from you. Thanks so much. Bye.